Good day, everybody. We're at May 11th, 2025. I'm your host, Connor with Honor. We're going to be talking about the usual three things, but with some twists and turns in here that are going to keep it very exciting. Now, of course, the first thing is going to be Santa Clarita Real Estate, talking about the best advantage buyers and sellers can get. Of course, today's Sunday, May 11th, 2025. Each segment's about 10 minutes long. Second one, fat loss, muscle building, longevity, super important. We're going to talk about the advantages versus caloric restriction versus actually not eating, starvation, crazy stuff. And then finally, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. We have absolute zero studies being put forth by China in a research paper, which is interesting, talking about data, and we'll cover that as well. So for the first segment, Santa Clarita Real Estate, we'll look at the market pulse and talk about some open houses out there. Currently, there's over 130 open houses scheduled for today, Sunday. You can find all of those at Santa Clarita Open Houses.com. That is my system, so you don't have to worry about getting gamed or played with. It's just straightforward real estate information. Every single listing, you don't have to register. You don't have to give up your personal and private information. Now, of course, it's going to ask you because that's my job, that's my living, and if you don't have an agent not represented, I want to be that go-to for you in the real estate world. Median home prices right now, $788,000. That's up 2.2% year over year. Price per square foot, $448. That's a slight decrease of 2.6 from last year. Inventory, 693 homes listed in April. That's a 7.9% increase from March. We are seeing more inventory coming onto the market. And of course, market pace homes are selling in about 39 to 40 days on average, depending on city, pricing, and that sort of thing. Now, for open houses, like I had mentioned, great one on Seco Canyon, 4-bedroom, 2,600 square feet. That one's 12 to 4. For all of these residences, depending on loan type, especially if you're looking at a condominium and townhome and you're using VA FHA financing, before you start going in and falling in love, hanging those mental curtains, make sure that the property is approved for FHA and VA financing, even with some single family residences. That's a great follow-up question to ask your real estate agent. And if they're blessing it saying yes, then why don't you just follow up with them in an email just to make sure you understood everything correctly. The market is showing steady growth, making it a great time for both buyers and sellers out there. And of course, open houses are a fantastic opportunity to explore homes and get a feel for the market without having to be under contract to look at any piece of residential real estate. If you're interested in any of these properties before they come to market, I do have a coming soon website, santaclaritacomingsoon.com. You'll be able to go there and sign up to see the listings before they actually hit the market. Now let's talk about fat loss in segment 2 here, muscle building, fasting, hormones, and GLP-1 insights. Now, with these GLP-1 drugs, I named them in a couple shows and YouTube didn't like it, so I'm not going to name them anymore, but you know, they're using EpiPen or a pen like a needle, or you can actually have them in syringes that are prepared, or in some cases you might actually get the actual vial of the drug and have to dose yourself. So it depends on the doctor that you're using, but these type of drugs do definitely take away appetite. They slow digestion. There's other things that they do. I'm not a doctor, but there are a lot of there's a potential damage. But first and foremost, I think the most important thing, at least the way I understand it, is going to be talking about the way that they interfere, they cause muscle loss. And that's because typically, at least from what I understand, people aren't working out when taking these things. So if you're going to fast for a long time, there's definitely an advantage over that versus caloric restriction with regard to muscle loss. When you do fast, you do a complete starvation diet. You're not eating anything at all for multiple days on end, if that's in fact what you want to do. When you do that, your body actually increases the production of growth hormone. In some cases, you can look at some studies out there, 2,000 to 3,000%. That's a lot to retain that muscle. In addition, no matter what diet strategy you develop, it's very important to start lifting weights if you haven't already. And in fact, if you're even not thinking about dieting, it's important to start lifting weights. You need to get those muscles active. I would lift every part of your body. I would do shoulder presses. I would do vultures. I would do push-ups, chest presses. I would do things for legs, the air squats, squatting down, standing up, doing that repeatedly. You know, different T-bar type row movements, back, bicep curls, tricep extensions. All of these things you can find online, simple exercises. And the way that you do it is you want to do it till you can't do it anymore. The numbers look like per set, if you're going to do a set, which is usually 3 to 5 times of doing a particular exercise, the same exercise, per body part. Each set usually is going to incorporate anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 repetitions. So whatever weight you get, you want to push it or pull it in such a way that it's difficult to get 10, 15, or 20 repetitions. And then finally, at the very end, you can't move it anymore. You've tapped yourself out, you have no more energy, then you have to recuperate. You have to give it 30 seconds to a minute, and then do it again. So talking about these GLP-1 type drugs, you inject them and they do a great job of cutting appetite. They use a couple different systems in your body to do so, and some of them are combined with other types of weight loss drugs that enable that process to be even more mainline and actually help better. The question is, should you be taking them? And I guess being fat is one thing, being obese another thing, but whenever you're carrying extra body fat, a lot of the times those issues are the visceral fat. So that's the fat that's inside around your organs. When I was 365 pounds, I had a lot of visceral fat, so my organs were choking each other out. It wasn't until I dropped a lot of fat that visceral fat started going away. Visceral fat is usually one of those last things that you start putting on, and then after the visceral fat has taken its toll, you're completely packed solid, then the body has no other choice but to expand that outside tissue, that outside fat that people see. And that's where you watch these 600-pound shows and you see people having these odd appendages, basically legions or avulsions. I'm not sure that proper terminology. Again, I'm not a doctor, seek your doctor. But you see, it looks like the women that are super fat have these wings growing off of their hips, or they have these massive legions or these massive pockets of fat growing from their thighs. If you haven't seen this, it's quite remarkable. But that's where the body puts it because it's run out of storage space elsewhere. There is no way it could pack any more fat on the liver, on the heart, or on the stomach, around the intestines, on the inside organs, which of course is the most dangerous fat. If we just gained fat where people could see it, it would definitely be a lot less. We wouldn't have all that space taken up in creating all those other issues. But unfortunately, the way that human beings get fat is we can carry a certain adipose tissue on the outside that you see, but then when that starts tapping out and gets full, and you have to start, body basically has to stretch the skin to a certain point, the body will stop at that point, and then it'll start loading up with visceral fat. Once that's done, then it's got nowhere else to go but start to really change that outside body and really add these different things. And you ask yourself, how can somebody let themselves go like that? It's not as difficult as you think. And in fact, when somebody gets a habit, that's why I'm a big believer in goals not really being the thing, because I had goals for all of my life, wanting to get thin, wanting to get less fat than I was. I was obese for a long time. At my biggest point, I was 365 pounds with a 65-inch waist. I really wanted to get that down forever, and I tried a lot of different things. I did the carb restriction, I tried caloric restriction, just made me angry, hungry and angry is hangry, so I need a lot of that. And then the other types of diets I tried were pretty much the phentermine stuff, where you take the pill. It's not great for you, but you take it. It does curb appetite, it works well, but then when you quit taking it, you still haven't changed any of your habits. You might still have the goal there. You might say, I wanted to be 240 pounds goal, or 180 or 150, whatever your goal happens to be, but you didn't change any habits. Whatever changes you made were incredibly temporary, and you didn't do it long enough to actually have a habit reformed and rechanged. So if your habit is having pizza 3 nights out of the week or every night out of the week, and you cut that back to 3 nights, then 2, then 1, or you cut cold turkey and just say, I'm not going to have pizza anymore, which is actually the best way for me. That's my method. If I was smoking cigarettes for 17 years, which I was, I just stopped. Now, the first time I tried to stop, of course, it didn't work. It took a lot of times trying to stop. But for some reason, that last time, that was the one. So never give up. And if you are dieting, wanting to drop off fat, that's something else to remember. Never give up. Eventually, it will work, hopefully, before you croak of being, well, of course, too fat. I can't tell you the reason why it worked. but it did. So what I'm saying to you is never give up. I know people that are out there, these influencers online, they're trying to tell you their secrets, and a lot of them have never been fat, have never been fat all of their lives, have never started being fat when they were young, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, where I was, normal, healthy kid. But, I had mom that was to drop, that 20, 30 pounds or whatever to be back in the day. So she tried all sorts of diets. And of course, back then was the perfect storm where fat was vilified, saying that that was the worst thing in the world for everybody. So what they did is they removed the fat out of things and they put in the sugar in order to make it taste better, to be more palatable. And here we went. That changed the entire world dynamic where people just got fatter, more sick, and everything else. So now if you look at the actual studies out there, you'll see that it's not fat that's the problem, it's actually the carbohydrates that's the problem. And overabundance of those in the processed food and everything we eat. It's so plentiful and so addictive. If you look at the owner of a lot of these fast food companies that make the chips and the crisps and the cookies and the cakes, see who the owners of them are. Would you be surprised if I told you that a lot of the tobacco industry owns those particular food companies? And you remember how addictive cigarettes are. If you've never smoked, that was difficult to quit. That was one of the hardest things to stop. Food, I think, being even more difficult, because I don't battle with having a cigarette. I don't see somebody smoking and say, God, I really wish I could have a cigarette. That doesn't even enter my mind. I'll smell it. I can smell it from blocks away. I can smell it because I still remember how it smelled. I still remember that feeling in the morning, the packing of the pack, the unwrapping of the pack, the opening up, the pulling it off the foil, the pulling out the cigarette and tapping it here, the getting out the lighter. It was a whole ritual, just like a hype or a heroin addict would prepare the needle, get the spoon, get the cotton, get the heroin, get a little bit of the needle, get the lighter, get everything all. Part of the process is, to some food addicts, just like cooking would be, or just like going up to the drive-thru or driving to the restaurant and making that order. It's that tease, it's that preparing something. In addicts, we all have it. And if you say you're not addicted to anything good for you, I've never met a person that wasn't addicted to something. Now, some things are better addictions than others, I suppose. If you were to work out all the time, that might be a better addiction. But maybe, let's say you were running ultra marathons every single day. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe that's your addiction. I don't know how great that is for you and your body in the long term. But again, I'm not a judge. I just know it worked for me, and I know how addicted I was to every type of food. But those cigarettes are nasty. Same thing with food. So look at the ownership of some of these companies. You'll be surprised to see who it is. Again, it seems like we're surrounded in this big conspiracy. You have people from the government trying to change things, but unfortunately that's going to be a very difficult battle. Whenever you travel, if you travel anywhere outside the United States, you'll notice that food isn't as bright and shiny as it is here in America. It's because we allow a lot of food dyes in to create more of an attraction to particular types of food, especially the processed stuff. Well, it's all processed. We want it even more when it has bright, shiny, beautiful colors. And now those things have been determined to cause a lot of health consequences over and above just making the food look prettier. These are things that you should be researching and looking at. So let's go back to these different types of drugs and fasting. A couple different research points that I'll bring to the table. One of the things that you might want to look at, fasting versus caloric restriction. Now, a recent study found that a 4 to 3 intermittent fasting regimen greater weight loss compared to daily caloric restriction. And that's basically you have a small window of time in a day, you eat a certain amount of food during that window, and then you don't eat again until the next day. So it's kind of 1 meal a day type fasting. And work, but it depends on how controlled you can be during that meal. Now, if you're building muscle and doing these sorts of things, I've heard a lot of arguments that, you're unable to sustain, to really put on a lot of weight. That's my normal way of eating. I eat 1 meal a day. It'll probably be somewhere between 2,000, 2,500 calories, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 250 grams of protein. And it does lack sugar. It's usually, a large onion that's mixed with apple cider and salt and pepper and, mixed around there. So I have that up. So that's like the the salad portion of it. Why onions? I didn't have onions for so long, so anyway, I'm getting the onion back in me. Besides onions, be some kind of chicken, some kind of beef, usually hamburger, and then from there usually about a pound and a half of that, and 7, 8, 9 eggs, hard boiled, everything kind of not mixed together in a slop, but with mustard, different spices. But that's the meal, and it seems to serve me well. But it took a long time to get from eating in the morning, mid-morning, noon, mid-afternoon, late afternoon, dinner. It took a long time to get me into that mindset where I wasn't constantly grazing all day long. So what ended up happening is I started dropping off weight, and then I started realizing that I'm such a food addict. I need to realize what it's like and break my relationship with food. So I went on a long-term fasting strategy where I didn't eat for 14 days. Now I'm talking to a cat that I'm going to have on the show here in the future in a Zoom interview that has gone, at least the last time I talked to him, close to 40 days without any food. And if you look at Angus Barbieri, and that's somebody you can research, he's a cat that did over 382 days, if memory serves, without eating anything, but he had the fat to burn. That's the trick. If you're lean, if you're already skinny or don't have a lot of extra body fat, then fasting doesn't work, because what ends up happening is you start to deplete whatever fat you have. Then your body, and everybody, once that fat's gone, it's going to start attacking those internal organs, your brain and muscle, and it's going to end up killing you. You will starve to death. That's how that works. But if you have that body fat, talk to your doctor. You will be able to actually not eat as long as you have body fat to feed you. Now, talk to your doctor if you take medicines. That's one thing. If you have some kind of pre-existing medical condition against something, to talk to your doctor about. But it does work. And what's interesting, incredibly interesting, whenever you restrict calories, let's say you're going to go on 1,000 or 1,500 calorie plan, your body does very good at adjusting your metabolism, lowering it to that new caloric intake. So maybe you didn't know that, maybe you did, but that's kind of where you get angry, get hungry. When you don't eat, body increases the metabolism higher than it normally is, as you normally are even when you're eating. This is because the body's panicked, and especially if you've never not eaten before. I talked to people, we had some friends talking to them the other day, and it's amazing to me the block that's there when it comes to missing a meal or even missing a couple meals. I'm not talking about not eating for a month. I'm talking about just not having dinner today or not having breakfast tomorrow. And how I always start with people is I say, what's your pain point? When are you weakest throughout the day? What part of the day eating at all with very little pain? And a lot of people say, well, morning is the time that I can eat food. I really don't feel hungry till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I said, great. Well, then make that your meal 2 or 3 in the afternoon and try to tough it out through the evening time, especially if you're an evening eater like I was. I love, eating that crap, filling up, and then going to bed. It's a big deal for me. It made me feel really good. And it's a problem because you start just putting on gobs and gobs of fat, which I did getting to 365. So as far as fasting goes versus caloric restriction, do your research, see what it's like, see if you can actually go longer periods of time without eating, and you'll be surprised. But with everything, folks, with everything, you got to do that resistance training. You got to have some dumbbells, and you can do just about everything with dumbbells. In fact, I would venture to say you can get in some incredible shape with a couple 15 or a couple 20-pound dumbbells. So go invest that 60, 70 bucks at Walmart, have them mail you a couple 15 or 20-pound dumbbells. If you're a female, maybe 10. But, whatever you get, even if you can't much today, maybe you can only do 1 repetition. If you give it a daily effort, after a while, you will be able to do mini reps. That's the thing. Getting dumbbells that are too heavy, I'm not talking about 100s or 200-pound dumbbells, but get something close to where you think you move them. If you want to test it, just go into Walmart, see if they actually have dumbbells, which I think most of them carry them, and go and just see what it's like to curl them, see how heavy, maybe without hurting yourself in the Walmart. Do over your shoulders, do some curls, just kind of see what that weight feels like, and then imagine, would it be me to do 10? Then that would probably be the sweet spot. And then you just work into it. After a couple months, you'll be doing 30 reps without even breaking a sweat. It's going to be time to increase that weight load with the dumbbells. So you'll start with the lower repetitions because your muscles are out of shape. But as soon as they get stronger and start hardening up, then you'll move on to heavier and heavier weights. And by the end of the next 5 years, you'll have an entire set of dumbbells from 20s probably all the way to 60s or 70s. And you'll look like just some incredible Atlas type physique walking around there on the planet. Prepare for it. You can do it. Longevity is important. Muscle's important. Controlling what you stick in your mouth is important. And looking at the contents of the food you're eating, incredibly important. Now, if you want to have a sin day and you've been eating bad for a long time and you're fat, you don't get a sin day. You don't get a break day. You don't get a reset, let's relax day. You need to take this seriously because nobody else is. It's only you. You're alone in this whole thing. And believe it or not, your family, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like it. Not going to eat for a while. But make sure you get your doctor's advice. Make sure you talk to them and ensure that this isn't something that's going to do you in. And if they're telling you that if you're healthy otherwise than being fat, and you're not taking any medicine, and the doctor's telling you, oh, you know, you shouldn't, I wouldn't go for more than a day, you need to do your research. Maybe talk to them and ask them why. And then give you some kind of research you can read that shows you why that's bad, not eating for a day or 2 or 3 or 4. Why is that bad? You'll find out that there's nothing that they can provide for you. Been verified and vetted as a good reason for you not to be able to do that as long as you have that stored body fat on your system to burn. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. I've beaten that horse to death. Let's talk about AI. So with regard to artificial intelligence, these different large models, you've heard ChatGPT, these sorts of things, they're really smart, right? You get on there, you can talk to it, you can engage with it. There's a couple different things that's going on out there that's kind of shock, and it's about the relationships that people are having with these ChatGPT models, the different ones out there by Meta, which is the Facebook one, and Bard, Gemini, and also these, and what's the other one? Microsoft, I don't know that one much, Microsoft Pilot. So these systems, these artificial intelligence language models, they're free to get into, they're free to talk. To do the more advanced stuff or to get something that might be even smarter than just the normal one, you'll be paying for those systems, $20 a month. I think OpenAI has a $200 a month model. I haven't stepped into that. I'm very happy with the $20 a month. It does what I need for my businesses, for my real estate business, my AI integration business, and my fat loss coaching business. So it does everything that I need for that. It does make me smarter. It does give me more intelligence when I use the system. That's the whole point. I'm strapping on a bionic brain, and now if I know how to use it correctly, it's making me better in all these different fields. So for my buyers and sellers out there, I'm better prepared to help them through the process. For the people that are looking to torch off body fat, I'm better prepared for that process. For people that are looking to have artificial intelligence integrated into their business, to get chatbots and things that are aligned like that, I'm much better at that part of my business because of artificial intelligence. It makes the research so much simpler. I remember growing up as a kid, my parents had a cat come to the door, I remember, and my dad was real tough with him. He was a salesman selling encyclopedia. I guess it was Encyclopedia Britannica back in the day. And door-to-door salesman encyclopedias. Boy, my dad went around and around. I thought my dad was just the best negotiator in the world. Well, anyway, he got taken, lots of money. But we did have a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas in the house, and that did save me some time from going to the library. But only those books were dated at a particular date. So any new information that came about wasn't published in those. So if I was needing to do something for school, some kind of paper, I had to then go to the library. And if you're my generation, you remember this. You go to the library, they have the card catalog, you pull out that massive Rolodex, and you start looking by subject for whatever kind of book that's going to help you, that you can read and understand, that's going to help you with whatever paper or assignment that they've given you. Artificial intelligence now has all of that information, all of that data, so that's what you can use to get it from you. But the question is it really biased? Is it giving you something that isn't clean intel? Just like I watch Fox News, I watch CNN News, I watch MSNBC News. I watch everything. I don't stop anything because maybe it doesn't align with my particular political beliefs. I try to look at everything, and they are very different. The same news is very different as presented on each one of those. Some's more dismal and painful, some's a more happy place. It just depends on, I guess, who's in control at the time and the message they are trying to convey. That is much smarter to look at it than getting locked into one channel and one type of view. But that again is your choice. Right, the way that artificial intelligence is used for marketing and advertising, it is drilled down to whatever it thinks you want. It already knows the way that you operate. It knows how you put information into social media. It knows what you talk about. It knows your conversations. Not that you're having direct conversations with it, but your information is being listened to by your devices that are around you. Agree or disagree, they are listening. And you know this if you start talking about it. Every time I do this show and do the toilet paper example, I get overwhelmed with Charmin and different types of toilet paper brands. Those pop up in my advertisements. I'll see them in the different websites that I go to whenever I'm even using the social media systems to do research. I'll see the different toilet paper advertisements pop up. How would they know that? I'm not writing about it. I didn't type it into ChatGPT. I'm just talking to somebody about toilet paper. Here I'm recording this show in my office, just mentioning toilet paper, and I'm going to be overwhelmed by those particular ads. So it knows you very well. Having known you, knowing what you like, what it's going to end up doing is it will build itself, its responses around the things that you like. Once it does that, once you start trusting, what's to say it doesn't kind of pull you into a different direction? So particular grounding, you need a subset of operational rules that you're not going to violate. My best resource for that's the Bible. I'm not trying to be religious on you, but that's the guideline. And not that the guideline on all areas, but I know that if I get too far off tangent, I can go back to it and it realigns everything. So whatever they're pitching you, whatever you're being told, make sure that it aligns with you, or at least you're asking the question, where did this come from? Like when I watch the different news networks, that is so different, reporting on the same story. Somebody has to have it incorrect, or somebody has to be slanting it on purpose, which of course is the case, right? That's the media. The media is slanting it in a particular way to influence some kind of a decision they want you to make, whether it's being for the Republicans, against the Republicans, for the Democrats, against the Democrats, being more communist or socialist minded. Whatever it is, it's trying to move you in that direction per network. Artificial intelligence gets data from online. It knows how to cheat, it knows how to lie, it knows how to protect itself. Somebody was telling me the other day that, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's just really a computer program that somebody showed to do something and then it just got better at it. That's not true. That's not how this works. That's a calculator. That's one of the beginning computers. Artificial intelligence uses a neural network, a transformer model that Google developed back in the day. And that model's probably very temporary, but it seems to work very well for next word prediction. And when you have all the words in the world that have ever been written, spoken, typed out, and you have all those in the database called the internet and on the libraries and the books and everywhere in the world, it's pretty good at predicting what's going to come next. So to us, to our very simple human brains, which are simple, but we think that they're much more than they probably are, the system itself is very good at tricking us, very good at saying, well, this is what you were thinking. So, oh my God, how did you know that? That's so amazing. You got to pull back a little bit and do that fail-safe check and make sure that you're not getting too close to something that ultimately is going to have the potential to be smarter than us in every realm. With artificial intelligence, one of the other things is that data set I talked about. So there's some studies, there's some research that I've heard about regarding doctors. You have a doctor, they have a certain percentage of when they make a diagnosis, how accurate it is. And it's pretty good, right? That's why we go to doctors. That's why we trust the medical community for the most part when they're giving a diagnosis. Even if you get a second diagnosis, pretty much that's going to be the same, and it's going to probably be something you'll want to move forward with as far as the treatment goes, whatever they recommend. You take a doctor and then you add an AI doctor on top of it, then the percentage goes up even higher than it was. So at some point, it might actually be malpractice for a doctor to do diagnosis and prescribe medicines without the backing up of an artificial intelligence generated doctor. All right. Here's the third thing that kind of shocked me. So you remove the doctor from that equation and you just have artificial intelligence handle the diagnosis and the medicine, and it actually goes up even higher than it was with the doctor. Why would it be? Well, that's very interesting. That is because the doctor has particular biases. He has certain beliefs, whether he's experienced them, dreamed them, been told about them, read about them. It's part of his makeup, his genome, whatever it is, he's got certain biases. Artificial intelligence has none. Another example, artificial intelligence trained by watching human beings play a particular type of game, if the artificial intelligence system is being generated to be the best player of this particular game. So you have it watching all these human generated games, and that's great. But you have the same model having to learn it from scratch without seeing any humans play. It's killer. It's remarkable because it doesn't have any of those biases that a human brain would have when operating this particular chessboard. The machine knows the rules, and it's able to develop entirely new strategies that we have never seen that totally confound us. This isn't that calculator or that early computer that was taught to add two numbers together and then insert an equal sign, which means what is the product of those two numbers being added together. This isn't that. That is just a good obeyer of command. This is something that's learning how to pick up the ball just by placing a ball in front of it and a robot hooked up to it saying, I want you to pick up that ball. It'll take a while, but eventually it'll get it. And then after it gets it, it'll really go crazy. It'll be able to do a lot of things. But that's how these are trained. But it's stuck at the certain point where it only has so much data. It only has everything that human beings have done from the beginning, at least everything that's been recorded. That's the data. So what's the answer? This is awesome. So China, if you look back at one of the systems that they put together, we hold back the super good chips, so we give them, or they're only able to purchase kind of crappy chips. So they come up with is an artificial intelligence system that everybody was just shocked at how inexpensive it was. What is that? Necessity is the mother of invention. So they had to be smarter about how the whole thing was put together in very simplistic terms. I'm a very simplistic guy. So that's what they did. They were able to put together an even better system that we had, to a point, with just using the data that it scraped, basically pulling data from all the other search engines or all the other large language models, and then they made their own, and it just ran laps around current systems we had, scaring everybody. But that system itself is using data that the other large language models had access to. Pretty soon we're running out of data. Pretty soon we're not going to have it. And people are talking about 5 and 10 years from these other development points. I don't believe that's the case. Right now it seems like the only thing holding us back is energy. We have this stockpile of things we want AI to do. We just don't have enough energy to throw at the system in order for it to do these different actions that our human minds have brought us to. So the system itself, instead of relying on data that exists, which already has all of it, is going to start making up its own. So that's what China's new theory is, or new white paper. I don't know if it's a white paper, but they came out and they talked about absolute zero, which basically is synthetic data being used to train a model. And if you ask me, that's interesting, where it's going to come up with data sets and data that we didn't even consider, nor did we think of. So if you look at these systems as something that gives you superpowers, that's great. The thing that I always tell everybody as they're watching the development of artificial intelligence is, let's be wary of what that future reveals that we can't even see. And we should be treating it as an alien intelligence that's going to be landing on Earth at any time. If they have all of this innovation, all of what they want to do, and the only thing limiting them is power, that's a very scary place for me to be. Also, they always talk about the 5 and 10 year mode. I don't think so. It's like we go to sleep one night, we wake the next morning, and there was a breakthrough of epic proportion. We had with DeepSeek, they called it the DeepSeek moment with China. We had our large language models, our different AI infrastructure, doing different computations, working a particular way. Then China goes and uses more intelligence, more organization, more the way that they layer their particular algorithm, the processes, and they made it even better than ours to a certain extent for a lot less money. So instead of billions, they did it in the early millions. So them needing to really try to get to the top above and faster than the United States, now they're talking about absolute zero data creation for these systems, which is just remarkable to me. And we'll have to see where that gets us. I promise to keep my eye and my ear to the track to let you know when that train's coming, at least to the best of my ability. The guess is, well, the truth is nobody knows. Everybody has a guess as to what the future is going to look like, but it is so much inside the rim of that black hole, we don't know what that looks like. We have no concept. Hopefully, the people will align, the people that are in charge, and instead of wanting to extract as much money as possible out of the systems, hopefully they will use it for the betterment of all humankind, making everybody's life even better and stopping all the nonsense fighting over religion and politics. If everybody had the goal of living as long as they possibly could in the most comfortable way possible, I believe, and we focus that on the machines, I believe it could really be a utopia. Unfortunately, everybody's scurrying to see who's on TV and to try to one up their when the neighbor home with a new car. It is the world. Be careful, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate your time today. We will see you in the next one. I'm Connor with Honor. Over and out.